Mark, I am honestly exuberant and excited and enthralled that you were able to make time to sit down and talk to me today at PodFest. Truly an honor to learn from a master. And I think about how we drive profit with purpose. The agency does it with marketing performance, but you do it in a very captivating way. Let's talk about that. Can we get into it about what Captivate is and what it does?
Absolutely, yeah, very kind. Thank you very much. We're a hosting platform. We distribute, we create, and we monetize and market podcasts for the independent creator. And that's the important part for us. It's all about the serious independent creator, the person, I guess, that often feels like they're on their own and they're creating something that they know is really valuable and that they really enjoy, but they can't always get to where they need to be with it because they don't have that support network. And so rather than being just a software platform, we try and focus on being a partner as well, but not just for the elite, if you like. We try and support the indie creator because that's where the vast majority of, number one, podcast, but number two, vast majority of profits, monetization, audience growth comes from is the 80% of people that no one knows about. So that's really important to us.
So would it be safe to say that as a purpose-driven leader like yourself, it's really important that you champion the message of the common man, you support the person, I don't know, man, woman, I'm probably going to get nailed for that, but whatever the pronoun, the champion for the common human,
Yeah.
and that everybody deserves to have a voice and everyone deserves to have support. Would that kind of sum up a little bit about what drives you
Yeah, I think
get
so.
out of bed every day?
I think it's very important to I think understand that everyone has got something valuable to say, and it might not always be something valuable to say to you or to the people that you know, but to the people that matters to. It's as important as anything in our lives is. And I think a lot of creators, certainly a lot of people with podcasting, that they're sharing the message from a place of genuine humility, and they're doing so in ways that can genuinely help other people. And for me, and certainly for Kieran and the team at Captivate, it really is about how do we take someone who has something to share that matters that much to them and help them to connect that to the people to whom it matters. And I think that is very often missing. We can often broadcast into the ether with something that is fantastic, but just because we're not in the right place at the right time or with the right marketing budget, it never gets heard. So I think it's about that connection. And I genuinely believe that everyone has a really good story or something valuable to share, and it would be a shame for much of that to get lost because there's just no way to share it. So yeah, you're right. That's the purpose. That's the plan.
I think that is very clearly articulated and felt by many. So we talk about a bit of the success about Captivate and how quickly you were able to establish a brand, a service, and really grow from there. Let's talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, that's interesting. I just did a talk about brand actually here at PodFest, and I think when I reflect on the speed of Captivate's growth, it was very much because I was around at these events. I used to do pre-COVID. I'd be doing PodFest. I would do Podcast Movement. I'd do probably 10 events per year in the US, and it was being from the UK. It was fun. It was interesting. Quite a challenge at times. As I've done my fair share of red eyes. And when we launched Captivate, because people knew how I am as a person, they understand that I've always had this mantra of everyone deserves some of your time. I'm not that person that will dismiss people because of their stature or their status or because I'm busy or, if I'm at a conference, I'm here to see everyone. And when we launched that product, it was inherently built with that brand in mind because it couldn't not be because people knew me. And that was we were very fortunate that Captivate, it got a lot of users very quickly just because people frankly knew it was from me and from Kieran, and we had that brand, so people trusted us, so they instantly trusted Captivate, which I think that can be hard to value. I don't think many people would see for example as a very specific pre-launch strategy. I don't think many people would do that or even think to just walk the conference halls or to put the time in the content,
Well, I'm sorry for them because it's a phenomenal strategy to be able to take an upstart, to a very quick trajectory. Let's talk about you and your co-founder a little bit. How aligned are you in terms of what is he good at? What are you good at? How do you reconcile how each of you can stay in your lane and yet hold yourselves to a bigger vision?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I think it's very important with founders and co-founders to have, it's almost a Venn diagram of this is what I do, this is what you do, but the overlap in between is big enough that we've got some commonalities and some common ground. I think it's just so vital, and we got very lucky. Kieran and I used to work together in an agency before, and you could always see something in Kieran. He's a bit of a fighter when it comes to doing the right thing and building the right thing and building the right product and so on. And so when I got into podcasting and sort of said to Kieran, look, thinking about creating this thing, he was already on board because he just
awesome.
He knows what I'm like with ideas as well. So for me, it's very much I'm sort of the ideas, the communications, and very much the brand side of the product. Yes, I've got a background in user experience, user design, and coding. That is lapsed now by a long way. And
every 6 months it gets further away.
Oh,
Don't
right.
beat yourself up.
I've stopped the beating up in about 2014 because it does move so quickly.
Yeah.
But that's what Kieran's good at. He's technically minded. He's very logically minded. But we both share a vision that encapsulates helping everyone, and also that vision of why does a product have to be, number one, like the same type of product has always been? So that was the first thing. But then number two, why does a product have to just match everything else in the industry? So we always had, like, there is no better. As you know, better's just subjective. The only thing you can be genuinely is different. And we focused on that. We said we will only focus on people that want to grow their audience, that are serious about that. So we don't want a freemium model. And I came with that decision and sort of the idea, and Kieran very quickly just agreed. And because we're so aligned on that. So I think when you are a founder, and especially when you're two strong-minded founders, if you don't have that middle ground, that bit in the middle of the Venn diagram, you are going to clash quite a lot. But because we share the same mission, he's very clearly the technically minded person, and I'm very clearly the sort of product, the ideas, the front-facing communications and brand. Two very complementary skill sets, which I think you need that. All the best founding teams have those commonalities, I think. So it's important. It sounds really weird, this, but I think it's important to sort of interview yourselves as co-founders to make sure you are compatible, and I don't think many people do.
So I would agree with you that many people do not do that. And I would also say that there's a place inside the communications the communications theory of purpose. Mm-hmm. When you think about how I've organized the 3 keys, purpose, values, and story, and we think about how when founders and leadership teams come together, you each have individual values. But when you come together, you actually have a collection of shared values. And where, however you define them, you can actually create a roadmap for how to inspire and how to empower your teams with this clarity, as well as how they actually can make it their own. How can they take the things that this organization has that captivate values, and how can they put their spin on it? How can they put their mark on it? How can they be valued for, their contribution? And the fact that 2 people align so succinctly, when to stay in your lane, when to get out of your lane, when to give him the ball, when to take the ball, and when to hold the ball together. And that is really, really important for people to understand that is the first step of creating clear communications. You said you've used the word brand a couple of times. I love you for it. So happy, because the truth is that a brand foundation has a verbal beginning, which informs the visual, right? The logo, we all talk about that, and they think they give it to marketing, but it's leadership's responsibility to take that brand foundation of purpose, values, and story, otherwise my term, 3 keys, and really impact leadership. Everyone in the company, no matter how large the organization gets, really deal with the values, clearly articulate them, and then through a myriad of mediums, stories, visually, verbally, that's how we continue to spread, support the brand.
Yeah, I think that's important. I think there's a lot of there can be a lot of ego, especially in startups. I think you get one of the most important things you can do is get out of everyone's way. Once they understand what we're trying to achieve, and once they understand, I feel that they are allowed to breathe in that organization. Someone once told me that people don't turn up to work to do bad work. Everyone wants to go to work to do good work, and they want the responsibility to do that. And I think part of leadership, certainly from a product and a brand standpoint, is to articulate why you're doing this and what you're doing, and then to get out of the way. But and also, I think also act more as a lot of people say, leader or boss, but I think a lot of it is mentor. If I can work with the team.
Oh, that's a high five right there. That's right there.
I think you've got to do, especially.
It's such a big part of the job.
It is.
We never get a day off in leadership.
No.
And if we're not coaching, we're not growing someone else.
Yeah.
If we're not clear and we're not clearly articulating what we stand for, what we believe in, how the world is a better place with Captivate in it, how can we empower them? How can they be proud of the work that they're doing? How do we give them the room to grow? How do we make the investment in the people?
Everyone wants to have a good day, don't they? You want to turn up to work and have a good day. And I think if you give people enough room to own something, and it's almost, for me, I always kind of use the bowling alley. If you think the lane of the bowling alley, our job is just to be the bouncers on the side, just be the bumpers. And they've got all this room to play in.
Mark, I use that example all the
do
time.
You?
All the time. So I was like, I interrupted you. I was like, oh my God, I say that all the time. My job is to put up the bumpers, right? You're not 5 years old. I just want you to get as many pins as you can get. And I'm going to be rooting for you on the other side. So it's just, it's so, wow, that was really fun. So tell me, how do you fuel or fund your business so that it can have the desired impact that you so are intentionally and purposefully driving?
When it came to physical funding, we were super lucky because of the brand that we had in the space, and we'd walked the corridors so often for years. When we launched it, we were able to launch very quickly into just a profit almost from day one.
Wow.
So we stayed away from investment and all of that stuff. I think one of the challenges, certainly with something like Captivate, when you've got a leadership team like Kieran and I, who are can be quite bullheaded. Case in point, we had some advisors who were brilliant, great at what they do, but they'd very often advise something, and it was against the vision. So we'd actually do our version of it, and then in retrospect, they would look back and say, actually, I'm very glad that you did that version of it. And so I couldn't deal with investors. I wanted to be too busy building and
awesome.
Making profit. So the physical funding side, we were super fortunate to get into profit very quick, and I mean, within like a week of launching it was paying the wages and everything that we needed.
Within a week.
Yes, it was very fortunate.
I think you should pinch yourself and celebrate that win, because that is really extraordinary. That doesn't happen very often.
I don't always appreciate that. Sometimes what it's like, being able to step back and look at what you've done can be quite tough, can't it? To realize some of that stuff.
I'm going to say I personally identify. So yes, I understand. How did you identify your customer audience? And then how did you get those people to actually care about what you were saying as you were trying to get them engaged and gain their support as you were pivoting, right? Because you were walking the halls early on, and then you're like, wait a minute, I'm going to do this now. So tell me about that.
Yeah, it was natural, but also quite difficult. So what I mean by that is, what's the best way to articulate this? It was natural for us to want to do what we wanted to do in terms of positioning the company, positioning the brand, and using that example of, we're the only growth-focused podcast hosting platform that will be proactive about the growth for your audience. And we only want to work with the serious podcasters. However, whether you're a veteran or whether you're a new podcaster, if you identify yourself as being serious about this is the best place for you. So what that allowed us to do is, it allowed us to inform the business model. So, for example, there is no freemium model, because freemium would attract too many of the wrong people. They're just not our people. So articulating that almost became an extension of what I'm like anyway in conversation and in like when I do talks at these events and so on, because I had the brand of almost anti-guru. A lot of people were creating courses about podcasting or audience growth, and they weren't very good. And my brand in the space was always to say, actually, you, the independent creator in your bedroom, save your money, don't buy that thing. Do you know what? I will create that for free because it annoys me that much that that's not good enough. And so when we launched Captivate, people realized actually all of that has gone into this product. And it was bizarre because all we had to really do was keep doing that. And it was, but then add the call to action of, oh, but now Captivate exists.
Wait a minute. Are you just saying to me that you are just true to yourself and true to the brand? Is that what you just said?
Oh, I think people call that authentic, but then
is that
authentic
what they
became
say?
like a marketing thing, didn't it? So I don't know.
But what's amazing is that when you stay true to the cause,
Yeah.
and then, the riches are in the niches. So when you think about staying true to yourself, really just only being, only being focused on those who are serious about it. Like, there's so many other things. Please go over there. Like,
Yes.
I only want this, and to create a success out of this is really quite astonishing. So what you've done is really, I know you've definitely been one to watch these last few years
Thank
for
you.
sure. Having started a small upstart, the incredible growth you've achieved is really, truly remarkable. But how do you go about designing your business with the end in mind? I think that's a really interesting question as we all think about starting a podcast, but we don't think about what's the strategy, what's the purpose, but what's the end game for you?
Yeah, that's a good question. So we were acquired by Global Media and Entertainment in the UK at the end of 2020, 2021 even, time's flying. And it was, we never sought the acquisition, but we'd set the business up in such a way that we knew we didn't want investors, and we knew what type of life we wanted to lead. Like I've said from day one that when I have a child, I want to be able to spend as much time with that little person as possible. Now I've got a kid, I can spend as much time as possible with her because, that's what I've built and that's the way that we've done it. So that sounds a little contrived, but that was always the strategy. We've got to build a business that gives us that kind of lifestyle. But then we have to...
I'm going to interrupt you for
sure.
1 second. Contrived or life by design?
Well, exactly. No, it is absolutely life by design. I think very often from the outside it can... I think a lot of the time people can say it's easy to say, of course, you designed it after you've achieved it,
Bingo.
But it was genuinely that. And there's interviews with me years ago where I'd said the very same thing. And what that did is, I think it allowed us to make decisions around Captivate as well. Like, we want to give users the best experience, which means personal experience. And that means that we still do support to this day. We've been acquired, we still work in the business, and we still do first line customer support. So how can you understand what people are really feeling that are paying you unless you do some of that? And
Well, you have to be on the front lines if you want to know what's going on.
absolutely, yeah. And people are going to tell you. I mean, there's no better time to get a real genuine feeling from someone than when they're really annoyed. And when someone needs tech support, they're generally annoyed. So, and it was all about designing a business that was it would give people what they needed, but give them enough of us that they felt supported. And it was that balance that we designed in. And then, I mean, all the basics were quite interesting, like didn't use the freemium model. That was a decision we made for ourselves. But then when we came through to acquisition and to exit, it was better because it was the business was protected from any fluctuations in the market. A lot of the time we're reasonably insulated from, because we only want the serious people, and they're always going to be serious, whether the tide's up or down with the market. Those that identify as serious will always say, well, I'm serious about this, so I'm not stopping. So that insulated us from quite a lot of ups and downs in the market. And then I genuinely believe it was just running a good business. The books, stay on top of those. Just the basics that people let slip. Do the books well. Make sure that your brand guidelines are solid. Make sure that you've got an operating procedure for everything. We run Notion for our SOPs, and everything is in there. So if Kieran and I are here in Orlando at Podfest, something happens back at the studio, the team know what to do without us there.
And they know where to find it.
Exactly that. So it was those basics, but it's startling how many people don't do those things.
I know.
So important.
It's really a shame. When I think about, the audience that we speak to and all the nuggets that they can learn from you, I think a little bit about like what's next, right? You've created something here really intentional, really on purpose, so that you can live the life that you want to lead. You can empower the teams to live the life that they want to lead and feel valued for their contribution. But what's next for you?
Oh, do you know, I asked myself that when we went through the acquisition. It was a lot of people, when we come to these conferences, they say, what's the plan? Are you leaving? Are you exiting? Are you off? And I make it really clear that we just became part of a bigger organisation that we believed in. We didn't exit the business. So we're very fortunate to love what we do. So the short term is certainly carry on. We wouldn't. My partner Sam, my fiance and I, we've got some plans for things like social enterprise in the UK, try and give a little bit back to help people that need it, and try and do something of that ilk. But for now, we love podcasting, we love building Captivate. So it surprises people that it's literally business as usual, and we still really enjoy it. So it's probably an uncommon answer, I think, after an acquisition.
I think it is an uncommon answer, but it's your story. So we just want to make sure that you are heard in a way that you want to be portrayed authentically, if we may. But I also think about what a tremendous lesson that is for the listeners, because it's not acquisition or life after acquisition. Life carries on as usual, and yet you have potentially a financial freedom to do the things that you set out to do. You've achieved a certain thing, but you're still doing the things that you love. So it might be an uncommon, are you sure kind of answer, but you have the freedom to choose what you want to do and to continue helping your audience.
Yeah, I think that's important. The freedom to have that choice, I think, is really important for people. And I think when you're designing anything, when you're designing the life and the way that you want to achieve that, I think it's just making sure that, I don't think a lot of people understand that the freedom is what most people want, to be able to choose what they do and when they do it. And I think when you can have a little bit of that and achieve that balance, I think very often you will be surprised about what you genuinely want to do, because the grass is rarely greener on the other side. You probably want to do the thing that you're doing a lot of the time. You just have other factors that are making this difficult. So that was a big part of it for us, I think.
I call those factors pressure and noise.
Absolutely.
It's like a code word that I go into with my team sometimes. And I'm like, I'm hearing pressure and noise. What I'm going to say right now is being influenced by the pressure and noise. But it's important as leaders of our own companies and organizations that we just have to block that. And we have to stay true to the vision and stay on course and do our best to remain even-tempered and dependable in a way that is just true to that mission.
Absolutely.
So, last question. Enlighten our audience with some nuggets or words of wisdom, what you would tell your younger self as a leader.
I would tell my younger self to just carry on with what you're thinking and just continue on the path that you feel comfortable on, regardless of where you think it will take you. And what I mean by that is that I always wanted to have this freedom to spend time with my little girl when we had her. And now I can do that. And that was always the goal. That was how I got to that didn't really matter. It could have been this, it could have been that, whatever that meant. And I think so many people they think that their goal is wrong because it has to be influenced by revenue or finance or status or the perception of status very often. And none of that really matters, because all the stuff that you think you want when you're younger come when you focus on the stuff that really matters. You get the other stuff because you can't not, because you're so focused on the big picture. And that's what I would say, is just stick to the path that you're on with that goal in mind, and don't deviate from it just because other people might be uncomfortable with it. I think that's a really important thing for someone in their 20s, early 20s. It's pressure and noise. It can really knock you off balance.
I can't thank you enough for ending on such an important piece of wisdom, really, an important piece of wisdom, that if we can just, as our younger selves, stay true to what's important. Life throws plenty of curveballs, but if you stay true to the important things, everything else comes. And thank you for driving that incredible point on how to drive profit with purpose, because when you stick to your purpose, the profit will come. So thank you so much for joining me today.
It's my pleasure.
It was I really look forward to continuing a conversation and relationship build beyond Podfest.
Oh, I appreciate it. No, thank you. Real pleasure.
If you're a leader or aspiring leader and want to uncover secrets about the purpose-driven world we live in so you can unlock purpose and profit, subscribe to this podcast right now.